Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour with victory strategist, award-winning author and your happy hour host, Annmarie Kelly. Each week, Annmarie chats with women who have reinvented, started over or wrote fabulous next chapters. They share how they overcame their midlife challenges and how you can too. So kick back with some good happy hour something to drink and enjoy today's show.
All of my friends tell me that I'm the good girl, yes they do. They all see me as being so perfect, little Miss Goody Two Shoes. 'Cause I do something a little risque, and they all gasp and I just say, good.
Hi, welcome. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour with me, Annmarie Kelly, and I'm that recovering good girl and your victorious woman empowerment partner. And this is where us victory chicks, and you guys love us, meet on Fridays to chat about things we can do to make our lives better, more fulfilling, and give us a little more jazz and sparkle. I'm glad you're here today. Say, we have an S.O.B. coming to Friday Happy Hour today. You might wonder why I'd bring an S.O.B. to the happy hour, but it's not what you think. The S.O.B. is Gayle Carson, and the S.O.B. stands for Spunky Old Broad. And she's going to be talking with us about ways to get ourselves jazzed up. Gayle will be joining us in just a little bit. Well, victory chicks and you guys, I'm here today. And you are too. All that can mean is that either our invitation to the royal wedding got lost in the mail, or we just weren't invited. What do you think it is? I'm thinking it got lost, because surely we would have been invited, right? Too bad it got lost. We would have made good guests, don't you think? And I would have sprung for some airfare to the UK. In fact, I would have made a little sweep, maybe visited Scotland and Wales too while I was there. Have you been surprised about all the hoopla about the wedding since that spicy ginger Prince Harry and the lovely Meghan Markle have just even from when they were still dating? I haven't. And you and I are old enough to remember when Diana married Charles. Now, if you were like me, you didn't watch most of it because it was on a work day. And it was, as it is now, really early because there's that 5-hour difference. But back then, just like now, you couldn't get away from it any place. If you were in the grocery store, the tabloids were covered with articles. Every TV show sent their anchors to Britain to see what kind of interviews they could get with anyone who was even remotely connected to Diana or Charles or the royal family. You couldn't read or watch anything without being inundated. However, when Diana married Charles, I was pretty young and still single. So I was looking at what I would want for a wedding. And if I ever met the right guy that I thought I could marry, I was always like, we're like raised to think, what do you want when you get married? And okay, let's be honest, it was about the dress. That scene of Diana getting out of the car that was replayed in video about at least a million times. In that over-the-top, such a good girl dress with what seemed like a 7-mile-long train. It was amazing. It was over the top. For me, it was over the top. But it didn't matter a whole lot because I was single, and at that stage, I was enjoying being single. But, when it's the royal family, it is all about the dress. And I know some people, if you watch The Big Bang Theory and you watched Amy and Sheldon's wedding, Amy wore that same kind of over-the-top dress. And the other girls laughed at her, just the way, like most of the world laughed at Diana for her dress. But it was what she wanted, and it's what made her feel like a bride. So I don't think Miss Meghan is going to have anything like that. And neither did a few years ago when William and Kate got married. Kate didn't wear anything like that either, but they got married on a Friday. Who gets married on a Friday? Friday weddings mean that you, as the guest, go after work. Or you have to take the day off, and if you do, you're using a vacation day or a personal day for something you would use, and you do it you're using it for somebody else's wedding or somebody else's event instead of something for yourself. Unless you're in the wedding party, that it's kind of like a waste of a vacation day. Joseph's brother was married on a Friday because they wanted this special historical house that had been turned into an all-in-one wedding venue. Like here in Westchester, we have Greystone Hall, we have Fawnbrook, that beautiful Darlington home just down the road from the university. It was like that, and Saturdays were booked through the end of the year, that year that they got married, so they went for a Friday. And Joseph and I were in the wedding, so we had to take Thursday and Friday off because we had to go to the rehearsal dinner. It was 2 unpaid work days and 2 nights in a hotel in this very tiny town in North Jersey, Mount Olive, where the big attraction was the new candy store for M&Ms. Seriously, it was one of those stores that had 27 different colors of M&Ms, and everybody thought that was the best thing in town. So I'm wondering, are the people who get married on Friday nights the ones who waited too long to book their venue? Like, did William and Kate wait too long to book Windsor Castle for a Saturday wedding, and then by the time they went to put their deposit down, Saturday was booked? Yeah, I don't think they had to put a deposit down, and I don't think it mattered if anybody else was getting married there. But Harry and Meghan are getting married on a Saturday. And the big thing was that this week was the big dust-up between Meghan Markle's father not walking her down the aisle and not giving her away. It seems to be the biggest thing. In fact, I think this week that got more press than the Russian collusion investigation and Rudy Giuliani. Well, except on MSNBC. They're outdoing CNN in taking no breaks from the Trump collusion countdown to impeachment. But what about that tradition of the father walking the bride down the aisle and giving her away? I was wondering how that tradition got started. Like, I was thinking, was it because most marriages were arranged? It wasn't until the last part of the last century that women stopped being considered chattel. Well, at least in the Western countries. Before that, girls were as good as currency. And yes, money changed hands. They didn't call it slave money. They developed a nice name for it. They called it a dowry. And it included the bride and money or a piece of land and maybe some chickens and livestock too. By the time of the Great Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, people like Vanderbilt and Carnegie had a ton of money but no high-class standing. So they would marry their daughters off to British lords or dukes or counts, who, between paying a small fortune to maintain their castles and indulging in a lavish and often lascivious lifestyle, had more title than money. The American, they didn't care about their titles as much, so the American mom and dad would arrange a marriage that would give their daughter status and in turn give them status, and they would pay handsomely for it. It doesn't seem that it mattered much if the daughter wasn't interested in doing that or even willing. Or if she had somebody here that she was interested in and wanted to marry. It was all about the status to compensate to coordinate with their very big fortunes. So the bride's father walking the bride down the aisle and giving her away, maybe in those days was so the father was sure his daughter wouldn't skip town. What do you think? And certainly that isn't the case anymore, at least not in Western countries. We get to pick our own partners, and the parents walk us down the aisle. Oftentimes it's mom and dad, and nobody's giving us away like we're some fancy object. When I got married the first time, my father had already died. I walked myself down the aisle. Well, we got married in a backyard that was set up with rows of chairs, so it really wasn't much of an aisle, but I walked myself down it. Because much like the beautiful Ms. Markle and so many of today's women, I was already an independent woman. I had lived on my own, supported myself with no help from anyone else, owned 2 houses, one just in my own name and one with Joseph. So it seemed silly for anyone to give me away. Although, to be honest, I was a daddy's girl. I think if my father was alive, and if that walk down the aisle was important to him, I probably would have let him. I would have done it. But after the mess Ms. Markle's dad made with the press, he won't be doing that. But you know what? Of course, this is not her first wedding, so maybe he did it for her first wedding. So really, how important is this walk down the aisle thing? Well, although it's apparently important enough that Meghan asked Prince Charles, her future father-in-law, to walk her down the aisle, but apparently not the whole time. The reports were from this section called the choir, which is about halfway in Windsor Castle, in the chapel, about halfway down. So does that mean Meghan will walk herself the first half, and then she'll meet Prince Charles, and then they'll walk together? We'll have to see. That part will be interesting. Or maybe she'll walk the first half with her mom. But how smart is she to getting good with her in-laws like that? I mean, after all the dust-up surrounding Prince Charles over the years, he must be tickled to have that kind of a, nice role in this wedding. And then let's be honest, watching the Royal couple get married will be fun. And I know it's about the dress, but it's also apparently, from what I was listening to on TV, on TV this morning, the kiss. Apparently that kiss between the newly married couple is sacrosanct. But don't worry, if you miss it on TV, you'll see it. It'll be everywhere. So this is just like, in case you need to know, because you probably will, if your invitation came in today's mail, I have checked, and I'm doing a service, because you need to know this. If you leave right after the show, don't leave before, because we have a really good guest today, but if you leave right after the show, you can still make the festivities. You'll get right on the plane, you'll go over, you can sleep on the plane. So it's doable. Just get that bag packed. Okay, so much silly for one day. And after all, we have that S.O.B. here. That is, we have the original Spunky Old Broad here to chat with us. Dr. Gayle Carson is affectionately known as Dr. Gayle S.O.B. Spunky Old Broad. She believes in you. She believes in you being you, the best be you that you can be. She has worked in 50 countries and 49 states. And now she hosts 16 radio shows a month and appears on TV at least twice a month. As an author, coach, and media personality, Dr. Gayle believes women are like fine wine. They get better with age. I like that, don't you? Okay, so go get some good happy hour, something to drink, and when we come back, we'll be with the S.O.B., Dr. Gayle Carson. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Remember when you wished you had more time for yourself? And now you have it, but you notice you're keeping busy with stuff, but that stuff isn't making you feel happy or filled up? And when you think about what would make you happy and filled up, you get stuck or feel overwhelmed. And then you go back to what's more familiar, more comfortable, even if it's not making you happy. Wouldn't you love to find a way to start making sense of that deep discontent you're feeling? Well, you're not alone. I'm Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. And I know there's a place for you, one that other women have found to be both inspirational and empowering. And it's the Victorious Woman Project. Go there now and get on my mailing list, where you'll be the first to know about my upcoming online workshops, teleseminars, and more. And while you're there, take a couple minutes to look over my blog. You can download some of the free stuff I have for you and let it get your creative juices going. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the Victorious Woman Project. And that's at www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and Gayle Carson is with us. Welcome, Gayle.
Hi, Annmarie. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Good.
Listen, you have a bunch of spunky old broad tips that I wanted that I was on your website. I've been I've been really into Spunky Old Broad stuff this week, and I wanted, and I want to share them with. Want you to share them with my listeners. But first, let's talk a little bit about you and how you became the Spunky Old Broad.
Well, I've been around for a long time, so that's number one. Number two, I've never done anything according to the way it should have been done. And so when I was going through, because I'm also known as the Queen of Reinvention, so as I was going through another reinvention in my life, after being in business for so many years with various organizations, I decided that there had to be a new me. And I was at an event, and someone was speaking, and I was chattering in the back with some people, and I thought, oh boy, we shouldn't be doing this. And then I thought, well, that's okay. We're just a bunch of S.O.Bs, Spunky Old Broads, and that's how it really was born. And it really suits me. I don't expect anybody else to be an S.O.B, because S.O.B for somebody else really stands for spunky, open, and brave. But I am an S.O.B, and I like being one.
Well, I like the spunky, open, and brave.
It really suits women 50 plus. I mean, 50 plus is my market, and so, and a lot of women, when they get to 50, they think it's over, and I'm here to tell them you're just beginning. So don't put yourself on the back shelf, because you've got a lot of living to do yet.
And you really are such an example of that, Gayle, because you've had cancer 3 times, right?
Yeah, 3 times. Just went for my checkup this past week, and everything is fine. I've had 16 surgeries, so I look like a roadmap. But other than that, I'm here, and that's what counts. And you have gotten through the death of a spouse and a child. That either one of those is tough, but both of them. Yeah, I know. My son passed away before my husband, and somehow I think it was tougher on him than it was on me. But because he was really very emotionally tied to all the kids, and I was more practical about it and so forth. But he really was attached, and I think it partially contributed to his death. He was also a bad boy. He didn't do the things he was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. But losing a child is not easy, and it was very difficult for him. So then you made this shift, and so it sounds like, from what you're saying, it was a conscious reinvention, yes? Oh, yes. I had been on the road for 20 years, really 50 weeks a year. I was speaking in, as you said, 50 countries and 49 states. I had 1,000 clients in 50 industries, and I was gone 50 weeks of the year. And when he got sick, I said, I love him. Why am I doing this? Why am I on the road so much? And even though I was making great money and my clients loved me, I really didn't believe I was having the impact that I personally wanted to have. Because, when you work in corporations and do programs for them, and even at their meetings, you make an impact for a moment, and then it's over with. And even if you go in and do coaching and consulting, which I did do, still, it doesn't necessarily have the impact you want it to have. So I just decided it was time for a change, and that's what I did. And how did you, what were some of the steps, that was a big deal. Did you just stop taking business? I don't have steps, Annmarie. I just go for something. I mean, literally, when I decided to go, when I went into speaking from my first business, I had a business with 7 offices and 350 people, and I sold that and went into speaking. I got on the phone and I called 100 people a day, 500 a week, until people said enough yeses that I was booked 135 times a year. So when I went into this, I just went full speed ahead and started writing for that age market, talking to those kinds of groups, giving advice on those things that I thought were important to that demographic. And so I really, I don't do steps. I just kind of go for it. When I was reading your bio on your website, you talk about a silver lining mentality. Now, you know what, Gayle? So people have different definitions of silver linings, but what's yours, and how did it become your dominant reality? Well, I'm a believer that, you kind of make your own fate. You make your own life. And so it's very hard for me ever to get depressed. I mean, horrible things can happen to me, but I just don't get depressed. Mm-hmm. I might be sad or upset for 30 seconds or 60 seconds, but then my mind just takes over and I think of everything positive that can be done. So I think it's part of that silver lining mentality is a certain mindset. I have a very positive mindset, and so I do believe that that's a big part of makes me who I am. And I firmly believe there are a lot of people who are letting others take over their lives and also dictate how they live it. And many people, and especially women, are people who live in the past. In other words, I'm influenced by my mom. My mom was my biggest mentor and my biggest guide. But she gave me positive things. There are so many people who are still living under the thumb of their parent who may not even be alive anymore and not doing things because they were told, oh, you shouldn't do that, or girls shouldn't do that, or you're not smart enough to do that, or whatever it happens to be. But I was never part of that because my parents always encouraged me to do whatever I wanted to do. I don't think they thought I would do as some of the frightening things I did, but I did them, and I was very aware that when I graduated college, I had to have a job, and I had to be able to support myself. I mean, those were not the times when you went back to live with your parents. It just, right. I mean, you just wouldn't do it. It was humiliating to do that. Mm-hmm. So it was a different way of thinking.
So you took on all these different things. What were some of the crazy jobs that you took on?
Well, my very first job was at the age of 13 when I had broken 22 pair of glasses, and my father said, young lady, if you break another pair, you're going to pay for them. And we went to the optometrist's office, and I picked up my 23rd pair of glasses, brought them downstairs to my father, who was waiting in the car by the curb, and I promptly sat on them and broke them. Oh. And he said, young lady, and so the only thing available to a 13-year-old, of course it was the 50s, was babysitting, which I just hated. I never liked it, never did want to do it. And so I said to him, can I get a job, a real job? And he said, well, if anybody will hire you, never thinking they would. And, of course, the newspapers had a lot of ads at that time, and people stayed home. And so I went through the paper and decided I would make a perfect Avon lady. And so I started selling Avon cosmetics from door to door. And I was 13. I became the top salesperson in our whole area. So that was the first job. And then I continued to do that. But then the next summer, I worked in a summer camp to teach music and dance and drama. And the camp director said, well, we don't have that. I said, I know. That's exactly why you need me. And I talked myself into that job. And then the next job I had was in a radio station. And I was there, I was 15 then, and I showed up, and he said to me, well, I was there 2 weeks. I was there every day for 2 weeks. Took 2 buses to get there, 2 buses to get home, and the general manager came out and said, well, who are you? And I said, well, I'm here to get a job. He said, well, we don't have a job for you. And I said, I know you don't, but I will be here every day until you find one for me. And he did. So I just always created my own thing, and then, of course, I went off to college at 17 and graduated at 20, and at 21 I was in business for myself. So that's kind of how it all worked out.
So you've been spunky all your life, huh?
Really, yeah. I mean, I've given a lot of people problems. I've driven a lot of people crazy, but not for bad purposes, for good purposes. But I just never adhered to the norm. And even getting my doctorate, that was an exercise in something else. I mean, the university had never seen anything like me because I kept fighting them on a lot of issues. But I finally got my doctorate and very active with them at this point. And it's just funny how life works out.
And so in this particular reinvention, you're helping other women who are midlife and older to do those reinventions. And I was looking at your list of reinvention tips, and one of them stopped me, and I thought it was so interesting. You say that about reinventions, that reinventions stop the aging process.
Well, it does, because you're using your mind. And when you use your mind and you're always learning something new, that keeps you young, because you've got your mind is working, therefore that stimulates something else, and it keeps you interested and interesting. And so absolutely, if you're constantly learning, you are going to be constantly reinventing yourself, and you're going to always have this non-aging situation.
Well, but you know what, Gayle, what if you say, as I've heard a lot of women say, that, and some men too, they don't like the technology's too hard. I've known 2 women who left their companies because they couldn't adapt to the technology, they couldn't get onto the social media, they couldn't do it. Like, what do you say to somebody like that?
Well, listen, I'm one of them. I'm a technophobe. I'm terrible when it comes to technology, and it does cost me. I mean, I have a tech guy who does my technology for me, but, you know, he works a certain amount of hours a month, and there's a lot of things I want done faster. And I just emailed him yesterday saying, you know, it's just taking us too long to do, you know, X, Y, and Z. But at least I've learned a little. You know, when I first got a computer, I thought it was going to blow up if I turned it on. Now I'm on it every day. When I'm in my office, I'm probably on it 4, 5, 6 times a day, because people don't call you on the telephone anymore. Everything you do is on email. So, you know, I mean, yes, I could be a lot better. However, I can hire it done. And if someone says, well, I just can't master this, there are plenty of jobs for them where they don't need that. I mean, certainly they can do the basics on a computer. You know, that's something that they can do. And if they're trained to do it and do it every day, it's going to be very normal for them to do it. But there are plenty of jobs that need that intimate face-to-face contact, that need that old, you know, a saying of high touch, and no one's better for that than someone who is mature. I mean, so I don't think, I mean, it may stop them in a highly technical arena, but that is only one of hundreds of places where you can work.
And I think, and also, Gayle, I think that there's plenty of places you can go to, like, you know, the night schools, the adult night schools, where you can learn some of that. Maybe not a ton of it, but enough that you can text somebody.
But you got to want to do it, Annmarie. My mind, well, it's like when I read a book. I love to read, but I hate graphs, and I hate charts. And when there's a book with a graph or a chart, I simply turn the page. So I don't want to learn all that stuff. It's not that because it's like Greek to me, and I really don't want to spend my time learning it. So I spend my time learning other things. So if that's something you want to learn and you like doing it, then I think you should. But if you don't, I mean, you need to know enough to get you by, because everybody is on a computer today in some way, shape, or form. And whether people realize it or not, their phone is a computer. So they're using it in some way, shape, or form. But again, if that's the mainstay of what they're going to be doing, and that's not their happy place, I certainly would not want them to be doing it.
Interesting. That's an interesting take on it. You know what, Gayle, we need to take a break. So I want to talk more about reinventions when we come back. So everybody stay close. We're listening to the Friday Happy Hour.
Hi, this is Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. I trust you're enjoying my conversation with this fabulous, victorious woman. If you're getting inspired with ideas and feeling empowered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more for you. Tips, downloads, resources at the Victorious Woman Project. Go to victoriouswoman.com and look around and get on my mailing list so you can be the first to know about the newest good things I have for you. That's www.victoriouswoman.com.
Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and I'm here with Gayle Carson. We're talking about reinventions and being a spunky old broad. I so like that, Gayle. I just and don't know that I would take that one, but I like it a lot. And I can tell from our conversation, you really are spunky, huh?
Well, I hope so. I hope I don't lose that.
So, you know, I have a lot of listeners who are in midlife, and when we talk about reinventions and next chapters, I know how I've done it, and I've done it many times, but I'm curious about how what you think. Like, what's your favorite piece of advice to women and the guys who love us about starting a reinvention or a next chapter? Do you have like a first step?
Well, I think first of all, it's got to be when the timing is right for you, and that's different for everybody. And if you feel that you are at the end of something you started many years ago, and you're wrapping things up, and it's time for you to do something different, that could be a first step. It could be that what you did do or the situation you were in is no longer viable. Maybe your job has been done away with, or maybe now you're an empty nester, so that might be a trigger point. But it usually is when this little whatever pops into your mind, this little nagging doubt that says, there's got to be something else. There's got to be something more. And I do believe, even though I say I kind of go for it and leap into it, that you should investigate and see what the options are and what the viabilities are, because something that might be available in Kansas might not be available in California, and what might be available with a high school diploma might not be available unless you have a college degree. So I think you need to look at everything that goes into whatever it is, whether it's a hobby or whether it's a new job or whether it's a business or whatever it happens to be, investigate it and see how you feel about it. It's like especially when I was on the road all the time and I was in all these places, people would say, oh, I want to be in your luggage, just pack me in your luggage. And I'd say, no, you don't. You don't want to follow me around because you'd be exhausted. Most people could not take my schedule. And that's the point. I mean, people see the glamour of something or the shiny light of something, but they don't see all the work that goes into it, or how many planes don't fly, or how many times you're caught in a snowstorm, I've had all of those things. I've taken Greyhound buses to get from place to place because nothing was going except the Greyhound bus. And I've got a very funny taxi story where I ended up driving the taxi, which is a whole other story in itself. But there's just so many things that people have no idea what you go through to accomplish these things that you do in your life. So I think the first step would be study what it is you're interested in or what you'd like to do, weigh the pros, weigh the cons, talk to people who are doing it, and then ask some very good, intelligent questions, and then make a decision.
You know what, Gayle, I'm even thinking that even if somebody's thinking that they want to go to another place, say, for the winter. I'm here in Pennsylvania, so and this past winter was such a yucky little winter because we never got like a great big snow that knocked everything out. We just got like little nuisances. So people and then it went on and on. And my spouse and I talk about going to Asheville to live, which is it's not a warm climate. It's a temperate climate. But, I think when people think like that, I've been there to speak. I've spoken many times that you probably know at the Grove Park Inn. And my spouse and I were talking about this. It's like, well, would we like living there for the winter? We have no idea. I think it would be, so my spouse said, I think what we should do is when we're ready to do it, just rent for the winter and see if we like it before we just jump in and buy something. It's that same kind of thing. It's like, it seems like when you're there on vacation, it seems like a fun thing. But then it's not necessarily the same when you're there all the time. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, it's very true. I live in 3 places. I live in Miami, San Diego, and Palm Springs. So I live kind of this nomadic life, and, I do agree that a good idea, especially for the situation you just said, force you to go and rent a place. Because, first of all, you're going to learn about the neighborhoods. Second of all, you're going to learn about what goes on there during the winter months. And third of all, you're going to find out, are these the kind of people I want to be around? And am I happy here? So I think what you suggested is great.
Yeah, and I think even, and whether it's a location or a job, there's so many volunteers, so many places are dying to have volunteers. If there's a job or some kind of business that you want to be, to kind of find somebody that you can shadow for a little bit.
Well, that's true. I mean, sometimes there are situations where you can volunteer and get a good sense of what's going on in the community from that. And usually in not-for-profits and other situations, social organizations, there's always some kind of volunteer opportunity that's available. So, and there you meet some of the community leaders as well. So absolutely, that's a way you can get into things.
Now, Gayle, you and I both work with women, but I'm thinking about guys. Do you think next chapters are harder for them?
For women?
No, for guys.
For guys.
Yeah, because for a lot of us.
Yes and no. Women take things more to heart. So if they are looking at something, they're going to weigh the pros, they're going to weigh the cons, they're going to, spend time before they make a decision. Men pretty much are almost like what I do, jumping into things. Men don't care if they don't have the right qualifications. They don't care if they don't sound right for the job. If it's something they want, they're going to go for it anyway. So it's maybe harder because they get turned down more because they may not have what it takes for a particular position they want, but they're not afraid of making that move. A woman is going to look and say, well, I have 3 of these things they want, but I don't have 2 of the things they want, so I better not apply. The guy says, that's okay, I can do all of them. So it's not as hard to make the transition, but it may be harder because they could be turned down more because they don't have the qualifications.
Which makes me think of, I was on your blog, reading your blog, and I'm not going to remember exactly what it said, but it was something like that it's okay to make a misstep. Do you know which blog post I'm talking about?
I don't know which one, because I write so much. I don't really know, but I will tell you, of course it is. If you don't fail, you're not going to succeed. I have a 9-year-old great-grandson, and we were talking the other day, and I asked him, because I said, what is your favorite thing in school now? And he said, reading. And I said, what do you like to read? And he told me, and I thought, well, there's no relationship there for me, but I said, what about biographies? I said, biographies are one of the best things you can read because you learn about other people's successes, you learn about their failures, you learn about what they've learned by the experiences they've had, and that's one of the best educational tools you can have is to read biographies. And then he went in to say he had just finished a project on JFK, and we got talking about that, and then I related it to when I had gotten my marriage license. I actually got my marriage license on the day that John F. Kennedy was killed, and so we had a nice discussion on it, but it's just like Thomas Edison. How many times did he not invent the light bulb? Some people say 1,000, some people say 10,000, but whatever it was, eventually he got it to work. So I think failing is fine as long as you learn from it. That's the important thing.
Oh, I think that's a really good thing because you can move on to the next thing and then go in with a little bit more experience or a better picture of where you're going. Even if it's something different, you have a little bit more experience under your belt, a little bit more wisdom, huh?
Absolutely. I think that's so true. Yeah. People say if you don't fail, then you're not trying enough things.
That's good. So, but here's something, Gayle. When I was looking down your S.O.B. rules, and one of them is to understand yourself better, to better understand yourself. Now, how is it that how could it be at this stage of my life, and my listeners are in that midlife time, how is it that we don't, are you implying that we don't understand ourselves, or is there something that we're missing, and that's why it's such an important thing to work with?
Well, again, it depends on everybody's situation, but a lot of people have not even taken the time to understand themselves. They've just kind of gone by rote. into their different roles, whether it's getting through school and then getting married and then having children and then raising them and then dealing with all those issues and then getting them through college and then maybe losing a spouse or whatever, and then, being in a situation they're in now, and all of a sudden they say, wait, who am I and what can I really do and what are my skills and what do people love about me and what don't I like? I don't think a lot of people take the time to do that. Now, I have always done that. But again, I always had this mind to have a career. I mean, I think I was 3 years old when I said to my mother, I am having a career and I am not getting married. And I mean, I just always was like that. And when I did get married, there were certain rules that I gave my husband. I mean, it's a miracle he married me, because I said, number one will be my career, number two will be you, and number three will be the kids. And he said, that's okay, because the kids will come first, you will come second, and my career will come third, because you will always take care of yourself, and the kids can't do that. But we had the greatest marriage for 45 years until he passed away than most people who say they put each other first, because we were very honest with each other. So I think that if during your life up to this point you have really taken a look at what you're doing and asked yourself key questions and, gee, what do I really enjoy and what don't I enjoy, and what would I like to do that I've never done before? Where would I like to go that I've never gone before? And you're asking yourself these questions, that is terrific. But there's a lot of women who get to 50 who have never asked themselves these questions. Mm.
There's more I want to ask you about that, Gayle, but we need to take a break. So everybody hang in there with us, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour.
Are you one of those women who lived the first part of your life as a really good girl? That is, you did all the right things and followed all the so-called rules for women? I was like that too. But have you noticed that once you passed 40, you have less patience for those rules? Maybe you even think that the rules really don't make sense for you anymore. Maybe they never did and you just didn't realize it. Do you want to go where other recovering good girls meet to inspire each other and support their new empowered selves? Then join me, Annmarie Kelly, and some very fabulous victorious women. We're on Facebook at the Victorious Woman Project. So go to facebook.com/Victorious Woman Project. I'll talk to you there.
Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly. I'm here with Gayle Carson, the Spunky Old Broad. Gayle, here's the thing. We were talking about understanding yourself, but here's something. One of your tips is that I should start now to be whom I want to be. I thought that was so cool. What does it mean? Tell my listeners what you're talking about.
Well, it doesn't matter how old you are. You could be 50, you could be 80. It doesn't matter. If it's what you want to do, do it. Don't let your age or your situation or any of that ever get in the way. It doesn't matter when you start, but start. That's the whole thing of it. I mean, just don't let, I'm so old already, just start. That's really as basically as it is,
Well, I'm sure this is not going to be a surprise to you, but when I talk to women, a lot of times they say, well, but people aren't going to be happy with me if I do that.
See, but that goes back, Annmarie, to what we were talking about earlier. Women care too much about what other people think. You know what a man would say? With them.
Yes. Yep.
Because, they don't care. They don't care. Women care too much about what other people think. Now, I'm not saying that you should bruise people's feelings or not be empathic with them or any of that. But if it's what you want and it's not illegal and it's not immoral and it's not unethical, go for it.
Well, you know what, Gayle? In my first book, Victorious Woman, I tell a piece of a story of a woman who I met when she was dying, but she had pancreatic cancer and she decided not to get treatment. And I was with her for hours and we talked about this topic, and she said, like, nobody was supporting her. She wanted to open a bridal salon, and she made bridal gowns, beautiful ones. And, it was easier for her if she couldn't do this thing that would have made her happy. Then she just decided she was just going to leave. She was 62 when she passed away.
Wow.
And it was so sad.
It is sad. It is sad. And it's very sad to hear those kind of circumstances. Now, again, pancreatic cancer is extremely difficult to overcome. And maybe she should not have opened a bridal salon, but there's no reason she couldn't have had a portion of a bridal salon that was already in existence, or that she couldn't help out in a bridal salon, or that she couldn't be an advisor in a bridal salon. I mean, there's lots of things she could have done, or even taken on individual weddings with individual brides. I mean, maybe she didn't need to go into this whole overhead kind of thing, but there is a way to do that, and it might have even prolonged her life.
I think so, because we had extremely deep conversations, and she just felt her spouse wouldn't even talk with her about it. Her friends just laughed and told her she was having a midlife crisis. Her kids were like, "Oh gosh, Mom, you worked so hard raising us. This is your time to enjoy yourself." The bridal salon is something that she would have enjoyed, and I think that it would have extended her life. But
well, I worked all through my. I had breast cancer 3 times, had 16 surgeries, and worked through everything. I did full-day seminars with bandages wrapped around my chest. I did full-day things with tubes hanging out of me. When I had to have different surgeries and had drains and everything else. I just kept doing it, and it wasn't anybody's business if I did or I didn't do it. If I didn't do a good job, then it was certainly the people who hired me. It was my responsibility to them. But I don't think I cheated anybody out of anything, because I was very conscientious about everything I did.
Now, here's something else and I agree with you, but I was talking to a friend of mine, a very successful businesswoman, and the past couple of months have been particularly busy for her, unusually so. And you know how that is. That's good for the bottom line. You take the business when it's coming your way. But she was tired, and she said, "Annmarie, I'm getting too old for this." And of course, my first comment to her was, "Never admit to that." And she looked at me funny, and what I meant by that was, first, I think if you are too old to do something stupid, then you have wisdom. But Gayle, I feel that if I was to say I'm too old, I feel like that would be heading down a slippery slope. What do you think?
Well, look, Annmarie, I'm going to tell all your listeners right now, I am 80 years old. I did 2 hours of exercise this morning. Then I came into the office and I worked. And now I'm having this wonderful conversation with you. And I've still got things I'm going to do, yet today. And then I'm going to spend time just vegging out on TV tonight, because they're my favorite shows tonight. So, I don't think you're ever too old. I think it's, again, your mindset, your attitude. I mean, my sister's 5 years older than I am, and she goes as much as I do. And she's gotten 5 Lifetime Achievement Awards, and she's just all the time. My mom lived to 99 and a half, and she was of sound mind, and she was still shouting orders out while she was in the hospital.
Wow.
So, I just really think it's mindset. And I just think that many of the women, especially in the age category of 50 plus, they still care what other people think. And that stops them.
And you know what else I think, Gayle? I think that sometimes you say, well, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm too tired, or, too old, or whatever. Because you get bored with whatever it is. And you've been doing it over and over and over again. And, you're tired of the same old, that you think, well, maybe it's time for me to retire.
Well, but that's exactly why you go to seminars. That's why you read books. That's why you take online courses. That's why you go to conferences. So you're constantly stimulating your mind. I mean, in fact, I was listening to something in the car today, and this person was talking about to someone who is almost like a marketing genius, and that's what he does for people. And yet he went to this particular event, and it was a marketing person, and he was there taking notes. And somebody said, "Why are you here? You know all this stuff." He said, "Because I might get one new idea. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. Now, you might get bored of what you're doing, or you might get tired of what you're doing. So that's when you reinvent yourself. But if it's simply a matter of, gosh, this is just not stimulating to me anymore, I would certainly go and take a few classes somewhere or read some books and see if that changes your mind a little bit. But I think that I think people should always be learning.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. Now, we're going to need to go, Gayle, but I have to ask you, you've given us such great information. Thank you for all of that. And here's what I want to ask you. You've spoken in 49 states. Which one didn't you get to yet?
North Dakota doesn't want anything to do with me. I said I would come for $1 because I want to be able to say I was paid, to be in all these places. And they just have not seen fit to bring me to North Dakota. What can I tell you?
North Dakota. I would have thought Hawaii or Alaska, but North Dakota.
No, I've been to Hawaii several times, and I've spoken in Alaska, but not North Dakota.
So
people
funny.
say to me, well, that's okay. There's not much there. But I've been to South Dakota a couple of times and so forth, but not North Dakota.
Oh, that is so funny. So listen, you have something special for my listeners.
Well, I do. Actually, I have 2 different gifts. I have one, if they're thinking about mindset, I have something that they would enjoy that they can, it's free and they can go and enjoy it. It's called S.O.B.mindset.com. However, if they're interested, because I do a lot of training for people who want to get on radio or get on TV, then I have the number 6, S.O.B. 6 tips for .com, and that will give them the link to watch the tips to get on TV and how to do it. So I believe it's www.sob6tips.com.
And I put that link on today's radio wrap-up at victoriaswoman.com.
Good, fantastic.
So, listen, thanks for joining me today, Gayle. Have a fabulous weekend.
You too, Annmarie, and thanks so much for having me.
Oh, I'm glad you came. Thanks. And for all of you Spunky Old Broad wannabes, here's a quote from Gloria Steinem. A little something to put a fire under your butt for the weekend. And she said, women may be the one group that grows more radical with age. So listen, go out this weekend and do something radical. In fact, make it radically victorious. And then come back with me next Friday. I'm glad you came today. Thanks for coming. I'll talk to you next Friday. Chenzon. Thanks for coming. I'll talk to you next Friday. Chenzon. Thanks for coming. I'll talk to you next Friday. Chenzon. Thanks for coming. I'll talk to you next Friday. Chenzon. Thanks for coming. I'll talk to you next Friday. Chenzon. Thanks for coming. I'll talk to you next Friday. Chenzon.